Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to my next Deep Purple video where today we've made it to the 1990s and we're going to be talking about Deep Purple Mark V. In my personal opinion, this is probably the single most bizarre period in Deep Purple's history. It is worthy. There's some good material that comes out of this, but hindsight's always 2020, right? You look back at this and you think, what on earth were they thinking? But obviously, at the time, these decisions must have made sense for some reason or another, and it is a part of the story. So we will be talking about the album and a bit of the history behind it. The album is, of course, Slaves and Masters. I was very lucky to pick up this vinyl copy specifically for this video series. I have it on CD as well, but it's got the wrong font. I've always been very fond of the font that they used on this album, and the CD version that I have has this awful. It's just wrong. It's not the right font. So I picked this up for the purposes of doing my video. Vinyl version has a different running order for some reason. Still has all the same songs, but the running order is a little bit different, probably to accommodate the different sides, make it more economical in that regard. But yeah, we'll talk more about the album when I get there. So, Deep Purple Mark V. Of course, we've got the majority of the classic Mark II lineup. So we've got Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, John Lord on keyboards, Roger Glover on bass, and Ian Pace on drums. And then coming in on lead vocals to replace Ian Gillan, we have Joe Lynn Turner. Now, obviously, as you know, Joe Lynn Turner was the lead singer for Rainbow during their 80s period. And, it's funny, you listen to interviews with the band, around the Slaves and Masters time, and they always talk about how they don't want to be compared to Rainbow. But that's kind of ridiculous when you think about it, because if you go back to the 80s Rainbow period, the real core of the band and the three main writers of Rainbow at that time are Blackmore, Turner, and Glover. And in fact, they're the only consistent members throughout the 80s period, and the keyboards and drums are always kind of on this rotation for those three Rainbow albums. And then you get to Deep Purple, Slaves and Masters, and who are the main writers for this period? We've got Blackmore, Turner, and Glover. So, it shouldn't have been too surprising that people were going to make those comparisons. Not only in terms of the writing, but just Joe Lynn Turner's style, attitude, delivery. It's just inevitably there's going to be this element of rainbowness or late era rainbowness. Um, so I mean, they should have been expecting that. I don't think the Slaves and Masters album as a whole is it's disingenuous to call it a rainbow album. There's enough elements of Deep Purple there, but um, yeah, there's you can make that comparison. I think that's fair to say. Um, so yeah, where we left off in the last video, House of Blue Light, pretty successful tour. Not as big as Perfect Strangers, but they're not riding the coattails of the excitement from the initial reunion. But as they go through that tour in 1987 for House of Blue Light, it's made abundantly clear that Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan they just hate each other. They're never going to be friends. They've become much more volatile towards one another. They take a break after the tour, and in '88 they come back in 1989 for rehearsals, and very quickly Blackmore approaches management and says, "Look, it's either me or Gillan," and the decision is made at that point to fire Ian Gillan and look for a new singer. So. It's said that they did look around a little bit. There was, probably like a half-hearted search for another singer before they settled on Joe Lynn Turner. But and obviously I wasn't there, but I have the idea that Blackmore already had in his head that I want Joe Lynn Turner, JLT, to be a part of the band. He'd already had a long history writing with them. You know, Obviously he had confidence in him. And I think that's just what Blackmore wanted. And I think the rest of the band in this period is still in that mindset of, better to keep Richie happy. So, Blackmore says, let's get JLT. The band says, yes, Richie, good idea. That's fantastic. Let's do this. And by late 89, Deep Purple Mark V is born. I guess, Joel and Turner showed up at the rehearsal space and he just grabbed a microphone and they started jamming out Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. And, you know, they all made the decision, okay, yeah, he's the new singer. Yeah, it's honestly just so bizarre. I mean, they Deep Purple has had American members before. Tommy Bolin was the first American member to be in Purple. They never had an American singer though, and I think that that's a much bigger difference in terms of the overall aesthetic of the band. Um, Joe Lynn Turner's got a much different sense of humor than Ian Gillan. He's got a different mindset when it comes to writing lyrics. And Turner's always been very, very open in terms of, like when he joined Deep Purple, he didn't want to emulate Ian Gillan. He didn't want to to emulate any of the Deep Purple history. He said no, like this is going to be like a new thing sort of thing. Um, but when you look at the videos from the tour and you see him singing the classic, Gillan songs, it's just sort of wrong. Um, and I'll be totally honest. I'm not the biggest fan of JLT. I don't want to mince my words here. He's obviously a very, very talented guy. He's got a very serious set of pipes. He's a very diverse singer. He can do just about anything. He can do the high screams. He can do the low stuff. He's very charismatic on stage. There's just something about him that I've always found disingenuous, and I hope that's not too harsh a word. The image that he portrays doesn't really match the music that he does. And to me, he is a very commercially minded person. He's almost kind of like he's very corporate. He's like in my mind, he's like the yuppie band manager's, golden boy. He's the kind of person that these people would want. He has the look. He can do the pipes. He's very much a yes man, I think, in terms of what he's gonna sing about and how he's gonna present himself and whatever. But for whatever reason, that's always been my take on him. And in his defense, I mean, I don't think he's ever really gotten a fair shot because Joe Lynn Turner's always the replacement. He's never been at the start of a major band, right? Like he's the replacement in Rainbow, and when Joe Lynn Turner shows up in Rainbow, that's when Blackmore is focusing more on a more commercial sound, right? And I think it's exactly the same case with Deep Purple. There's interviews with Joe Lynn Turner where, again, it's just it all just on retrospect and hindsight, it all seems so wrong. But there's interviews with JLT, and he says, um, yeah, like when I joined Deep Purple, we were gonna use Aerosmith as the model. We wanted to make this old '70s band hip and cool and happening for the '90s. And that again, that just seems so incorrect for Deep Purple, right? He comes in and you look at band pictures from this era, and they're all wearing their leather jackets, and they seem more image conscious, and it just the idea of commercializing Deep Purple in that way just is just it's just not correct. um, and yeah, again, maybe at the time it would have made a lot of sense. Obviously they would have known that having Gillan out of the band, they would have had to do something to kind of generate enough interest to overcome that, because that's a pretty significant blow to overcome, right? Um, but yeah, I at the end of the day, I think it's a bizarre decision, and Joe Lynn Turner's commercial sensibilities, his sense of humor, and his general attitude just don't seem to fit the Deep Purple aesthetic. It fit Rainbow really well, but again, Rainbow is a different thing. That's Richie Blackmore's band. He can do with it what he wants, and he wanted to go commercial, and Joe Lynn Turner was the guy for the job. But Deep Purple is it's something else. I think there's too much history, and there's too much of a built up aesthetic that's there, that when you get the new guy, especially at this stage in their career, they're approaching their 25th anniversary. um it's not the right time to try and do this big commercial revitalization that they were talking about. I mean, it worked for Aerosmith, but I mean, like that the Aerosmith was always a little bit more commercially minded than Purple, right? But yeah, it is what it is, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing Joe Lynn Turner. I know he's got a lot of good fans out there. Like I said, he's got a lot of talent. He's a great showman on stage. He's got a great voice. There's just something about his presence that just never quite clicked with me. But it is what it is. Anyway, we'll talk about the album then. The album is, of course, Slaves and Masters. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this take of the video that I do have it on CD as well, but it's got the wrong font on it, so I wanted to get the vinyl copy for my video. And the track listing is completely different on the vinyl than it is on the CD. Well, not completely different, just the middle is rearranged a little bit. And when I go through the tracks, I'm going to try and remember the CD track listing, because I think the CD track listing actually flows a lot better than the vinyl. Like the side B of the vinyl, there's a couple of moments that are a little bit jarring, but yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, the album as a whole and the music within it, like I said before, it's very easy to immediately compare this to a Rainbow record, and I don't think that's incorrect. Like I said, the main writing crew is exactly the same. You've got 3X Rainbow members and 4X Deep Purple members to comprise the band, so it's gonna take on that sound, plus just Joe Lynn Turner's, whole take on things, right? But I think there's enough classic Deep Purple elements on here that you could still say, it is a Deep Purple record. I mean, again, it says right there, it says right on the record, it is Deep Purple. But there's some songs on here that are really good Rainbow songs. And I mean, if an album like this came out as the follow-up to Bent Out of Shape, then I think that would have been a killer situation. A Rainbow could have, really, risen the ranks a little bit more than they already were. Like they were accumulating hits in the early 80s there, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people that bash the record. It's certainly not one of the great albums by Deep Purple, but I don't think it's bad. It is, it certainly is commercially minded. It's probably the most commercially, focused album possibly in their career. I mean, Perfect Strangers, they're definitely Perfect Strangers and House of Blue Light. There are commercial considerations, but this is a different thing altogether. I think they're really pushing for it. Unfortunately, I think this comes out late October of 1990. This came out 2 weeks after I was born, actually. So that's kind of interesting. This is the contemporary album to the moment that I began to exist. But I think it is a little bit out of time. Even though it is, they are thinking in this commercial sense, it's released right at the beginnings of that grunge thing, right? So there's a lot of great stuff that would have been excellent in the mid to late 80s, but by the time we get to 1990, I think it's starting to get a little bit out of fashion, and it probably was a little bit dated, so the timing was a little bit off there. Just another thing another hit and a miss from this era. But all that being said, I think there are some good songs on here. There's only one song on this album that I kind of don't like. The rest is the ranges from, really good to kind of meh. And that's really what you get. The album cover is really cool. I did make reference to the font. I'll be real quick. I'll show you how bad the font is on this silly CD that I have here, if I can find it in short enough time. Yeah, this is, I don't even know yeah, so look at the font is all wrong, and it's a BMG is the label, but then it's part of like the Priceless collection or whatever that is. So how official this is, I have no idea, but I've always hated the font on that, so I had to get the vinyl. Put this back in my CD rack here. Apologies, it's getting distracted. But yeah, this has got the better font. I think it's funny. So like the font on my CD, I think, is really bad, but I think the overall cover is better suited to a CD. The smaller size, it kind of makes this like Looking Glass a little bit more mysterious. When it's blown up on the full vinyl edition, it does look a little bit cheap and cheesy on the inside. I mean, of course, you have the DP logo. This is like the logo of the 80s and early 90s. You got some melting records here, an eye, this person's face, which is turning into a truck, keyboard, some planets, a lighting rig. There's a wrench here. It's, there's some interesting, bizarre stuff in there, but when it's blown up to the size of vinyl, it's a little bit cheesy. But minor complaint. On the whole, I think it's a pretty cool album cover. Certainly fits the mood, and it fits one of the tracks on here quite well. And then you get Slaves and Masters, the title of the album at the bottom of the Looking Glass or Crystal Ball or whatever it is. Back covers pretty much the same thing. Of course, you have the hands, and then you get your track listing, and then some photos of the band up here, and yeah. Yeah, overall, like I said, it doesn't work as well on the vinyl, but it's a pretty decent album cover. I don't think there was anything too exciting on the inner sleeve. No, just your DP and a run of lyrics there. But yeah, we'll dive into the songs and we'll see if I can, as I go through it, we can remember the CD listing. Because I'm not going to go back to my CD shelf and waste any more of your precious time. So yeah, the album opens with King of Dreams. Kind of a slow, mid-tempo. It's a mid-tempo song, but a slow intro for a Deep Purple album. The very beginning I've always found very strange. You get those keyboard patches, and there's this weird, like, low, heavy breathing that Joe Lynn Turner is doing, which I've never really understood that much. I've always found it kind of odd. But then it kicks into the main groove. Again, Pacey is still a little bit stiff in this era. The drums aren't really bouncing around as much as they would a little bit later on in the 90s. But the song itself is pretty decent. This is one that you can certainly make some Rainbow comparisons with. This sounds like something that could have been on, Bent Out of Shape or Straight Between the Eyes. But it's still an all right song. I think the chorus is very very effective. I really like the solo section. Actually, there's again, not too much John Lord. There's a couple. He does a couple of cool little, like, organ fills here and there, but the solo section itself is a very ethereal Blackmore thing, and I do like how JLT does some little vocalizations, and Blackmore kind of goes back and forth. That's kind of like a little callback to What Do You Do with Gillan, albeit in a much more controlled sort of a way. And yeah, it's a solid song. There's a music video for King of Dreams, which is completely ridiculous. Again, what were they thinking? They did some music videos for House of Blue Light as well, which are pretty silly, but it's almost worse when they get the actors in there. And it's like this girl on a roller coaster, and her love interest guy is on the top of it, and then she goes through this ride. It's so bizarre. Um, and it's funny. There was a DVD that I had when I was a kid, when I was first getting into Deep Purple. It might have even been on VHS. I can't remember, but it was the documentary was called Heavy Metal Pioneers, and it kind of it was done contemporary to when this album came out. And so it finishes off with Joe Lynn Turner. He's talking about, oh yeah, I'm gonna be the new singer. I'm making my own footsteps. Da 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 da. And they play like a little segment from the King of Dreams video, and I remember just thinking, like, that doesn't fit with anything else in this documentary. It's just so weird. And it's funny because I think about, there's a little segment of King of Dreams where I almost always expect to hear the beginning of Woman from Tokyo, because in that DVD they cut from King of Dreams straight into Woman from Tokyo, and that's when the credits roll. So that's kind of been like permanently ingrained in my mind for whatever reason. But like I said, the song itself is pretty good. I think there's a lot of fans that really rate King of Dreams as the best song on the album. I disagree. I think it's all right. And yeah, that's that. All right song with a comedy bad music video. We move on to track 2, which is the same on the CD and the vinyl. We get The Cut Runs Deep. Really great John Lord intro. Classic little piece of Lord. And then it cuts straight into a classic Ritchie riff. This is a little closer to your classic Deep Purple. I think the riff is really good. That I think that works really, really well. Joe Lynn Turner delivers a great vocal performance. Again, very melodic, certainly very commercially focused. Lyrics that don't fit Deep Purple whatsoever. What about the heartbreak? What about the emptiness inside? There's such a seriousness to it. You know what I mean? What I like with Deep Purple, particularly with Ian Gillan, is that he doesn't take himself that seriously. And I think, even going back to like the Mark III and IV lineups, David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes, I think they fit better into that purple aesthetic than Joe Lynn Turner did. But again, he's been very open about saying when he came in to record these songs, he wanted to make them his own. So, that's fair enough, right? But a couple of great solos in the Cut Runs Deep. John Lord delivers probably his best solo up to this point after the '84 reunion. I think he does a really good solo on here. I like how when the final chorus comes in, John Lord keeps the solo going. That's certainly a classic Deep Purple element. That's something that wouldn't have been in Rainbow. Certainly Lord's style for one thing, but again, having that balance between the guitar and the organ. It's present on a couple of the songs on here, but it's not. Again, like throughout the course of the entire album, John Lord is kind of taking a bit of a back seat, which basically just continuing that trend that was set that starts on Perfect Strangers. But yeah, Cut Runs Deep, excellent song. I think it's one of the better ones on the album, probably. We move on to track 3. We get Fire in the Basement. This is great. This is a really good song. This to me is the most obviously Deep Purple song. This is something that I don't think Rainbow would have done a song like this. This almost reminds me. This is like the Lazy of the '80s, even though this was released in 1990. It just has that feel. Great guitar intro. That's a classic little bit of Ritchie. And then we kind of get that walking bass line. Again, Joe Lynn Turner delivers a great vocal performance. Lyrically, I think it's a little bit silly and not in like a good Gillan way. Again, it's like he's trying too hard. There's something that's less genuine about Joe Lynn Turner's funny horny song lyrics. Fire in the basement, ha ha ha. I get what you're saying. But again, I don't listen to the lyrics too much, so that's a minor complaint, really. Musically, like I said, this is fantastic. Again, a contender for one of the best on the album for me. I know they're a really great pair of solos. John Lord, for the second song in a row, gets a fantastic showcase. I really like the intro to Lord's solo where the band does that break, and we just get that, and then off he goes to the races. Yeah, Fire in the Basement. That is legitimate Deep Purple. You can't say that sounds like Rainbow at all. And yeah, great song. We do get one of the things that drives me insane about Joe Lynn Turner in this era is his little ad libs that he puts in. At the very end, there's the big wind up and everything, and then he just has to throw in, "Hey, you got a match?" And it's just so cheesy, and it doesn't even make sense with the lyrics. Again, the lyrics is like, "There's a fire in the basement, and only you can put it out." And then at the end, it's like, "You got a match?" Light it up again. But again, that's kind of, I guess he's trying to tie in with his whole cheesy innuendo or whatever. But it's not enough to ruin the song. But at the very end, I always just go, "Oh, anyone got a match? What the heck?" Or "You got a match?" I forget the specific words that he uses, but it's very cheesy in any case. So the next song, this is where the vinyl kind of moves things around a little bit. The vinyl finishes off with Fortune Teller, but that isn't the proper track listing. After Fire in the Basement, the track listing that I prefer, we go into a song called Truth Hurts. This one, this is where it starts to dip a little bit for me. The first 3 songs are kind of this steady incline of raising quality. Truth Hurts I find to be a little bit plodding. Great intro. I love Ritchie's intro there. That bum ba 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 bum down down. But once the song kicks in, it's very slow tempo, kind of plodding. The riff isn't particularly interesting. Just dum da da dum da da. You get the point. I'm not sure if they were going for something epic like a Perfect Strangers, but it doesn't really come across on this one. No organ solo, so that it loses points for that for me. There's a really good guitar solo though. I mean, Ritchie's playing on this album is fantastic, and I mean it's probably just because he's happy that he's got his buddy Joe in the band, right? He's in a better mindset. But yeah, the solo, Blackmore's solo was really good. We get some strings towards the end of the song as well. That's another notable element of this album I forgot to mention is that for the first time, really since the concerto, they're working with strings again. Now that's also a Rainbow thing. You know, late '80s Rainbow was doing a lot of work with synthesizers. So you know, again, you can draw back to whatever band you like. I think that they're using the strings more in like a Rainbow context. I think, but you know they're effective when the strings do pop up. They do sound quite good. It's the big wind up after Truth Hurts and the wind up with the orchestra and all that, and we get another one of Joe Lynn Turner's little ad libs. Right, he's really driving the title at the end, and then he just has to throw Truth Hurts. Oh, Truth Hurts. Truth Hurts. It's just it just does not sit well with me. And you know the song probably would have been up a little notch if you didn't have to do that one little spoken word segment at the end. I just find it really cheesy. But that's his style. I mean, obviously, he thought it was a good idea to include it. So who am I to say otherwise? As a listener, I'm not a big fan of it. I think that kind of hurts the song a little bit. But overall, not a great piece. Pretty plotting. Not one of my favorites on the album. Now, yeah, I'm just gonna look around. I believe the on the CD track listing, the next track after Truth Hurts is Breakfast in Bed. This one is an interesting one. I feel I've read on forums there's a lot of Purple fans that absolutely detest this song, Breakfast in Bed. It is very, very commercial. But damn it, I love it. This is one of my favorites on the album. There's something about it. There's a very cheerful, upbeat quality to it. I'm recording this in the spring, obviously, and I've always thought of this as this is a great song for like early spring or late spring, early summer when you can actually go out without just wearing a t-shirt. You don't have to get all your snow gear. I'm I'm Canadian, so I do deal with all the cold weather half of the year. But Breakfast in Bed has always been a summer song for me. I think it's got a great hook. As commercial as it is, it's just good. It's an upbeat, happy number. It's got a great hook. I love the riff, that boom boom doom diddle doom doom diddle doom 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 diddle doom doom diddle doom doom diddle doom doom doo. It's just catchy and it's good. And the lyrics are pretty cheesy, but again they're not too bad. I think the worst offender on this, he says something like do you take your eggs over easy or something along those lines. I think it's just like another ad lib that he throws in there. It's another one of those cheesy innuendo songs, but overall it's one of my favorites in the band. I really like the intro as well, like when that riff first comes in. John Lord actually introduces the riff. And it's funny, there's this weird like whistly flute tone that comes in that I think Lord's playing on the synthesizer. And maybe this is another reason why I like the song so much, but I have a huge nostalgia element. When I was a kid, I used to play a lot of Donkey Kong Country on the SNES, the Super Nintendo. And there's something about that flute tone at the very beginning that reminds me of Donkey Kong Country. So I've heard this for the first time. I was pretty young still. I was probably like 13, 14, but I was old enough to have nostalgia for Super Nintendo, and I remember that always registered with me. And even to this day, every time I hear that intro, I can picture Donkey and Diddy Kong rumbling through the jungle. So that's might be one reason that I like the song so much. But yeah, I think it's great for what it's worth. It might not be the most popular song amongst Deep Purple fans, but I don't care. I like it. And yeah, then where do we go from here? Then we go to Love Conquers All. Sorry, I'm going between side A and side B, and it's messing my brain up. But Love Conquers All is the next one after Breakfast in Bed on the traditional track listing. This is the one song on the album that I'm not too fond of. It's a good display for the orchestra. It's got the orchestral intro, which is pretty cool. And it's a well-written ballad, right? But I find it a little bit sleepy, and again, it's not the kind of thing you would expect to hear on a Deep Purple album. It's got a very, very good melodic guitar solo. Obviously, JLT puts together a pretty good vocal performance, but this is one where I could see this being on a bent out of shape or a difficult to cure even. Um, yeah, it's never done that much for me. It's just this kind of slump in the middle of the album, but thankfully it's only, barely, it's not even 4 minutes, so it's forgivable in that regard. But yeah, just a little bit too mellow, a little bit too, sappy. Love conquers all, da 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 da. We get it. Um, yeah, it's not one of my favorites. And I think there's some Purple fans that do think highly of this one. So what do I know? I'm just a Canadian fan. We'll move on from that one, and we get Fortune Teller. Now, it's funny, Fortune Teller it ends side A on the vinyl record, but it's one of the last tracks on the normal CD issue. I think Fortune Teller actually works as a really good closure to side A. It's side B that everything kind of gets screwed up. But anyway, Fortune Teller, the song itself. This is another one of those slower kind of plotting numbers. Maybe slightly comparable to Truth Hurts. I think Fortune Teller is a lot better than Truth Hurts, though. I do like the arpeggiated guitar line through the verses, and I think the chorus is really really strong. I'm not sure if that's the orchestra or if that's John Lord doing the keyboard that does that. Bow bow bow, and the kind of call and response between the orchestra sounds and the guitar. I think that's really really effective, and it's a really cool groove. Um, I've always been a fan of this song. It's pretty long, but again, the chorus I think is well, it's well put together enough that I don't really lose interest at any point. Again, great guitar solo on there. Probably could have used a little bit more organ, but is what it is. One of the longer songs on the album, but still quite good. We move on to the penultimate track on the album. We get "Too Much Is Not Enough." Now, this is kind of an outlier song in that this was actually written for Joe Lynn Turner's second studio album, which was actually never released. Al Greenwood is the one of the co-writers. He was a member of Foreigner, but this song has no writing credits to any of the quote traditional Deep Purple members. So that's kind of makes it a bit of an outlier. I remember when I was younger, I hated this song because I thought it sounded so cheesy, but it's a grower. The older I've gotten, the more I've come to appreciate Too Much Is Not Enough, which is funny because, I'm talking about how I'm not the biggest Joe Lynn Turner fan, and this is probably the most Joe Lynn Turner song on the album. But I think it's great, and once I got over that extremely 80s synthesizer tone that John Lord uses on the chorus, um, it's a very high energy rocker. I mean, I like how we got a fade in. The song fades in. We kind of get those classic little bits of Richie chugging away. But those synth lines on the chorus. First time I heard it, I hated it, but I'm a big fan of it now. Just that do 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 bop bop. I think it's great. Very very high energy. Again, your cheesy, 80s, I want your love kind of lyrics, but it ticks all the boxes for being a good rock song. How much of a Deep Purple song it is, I'm not really too sure. Again, there's a lot more synthesizer than there is an organ, but then that's kind of a trend throughout most of the 80s in Deep Purple anyway. So what could be said? I think it's a decent song. I've learned to love it the older I've gotten. And that brings us to the final track on the album, which is Wicked Ways. I think this song is fantastic. Probably the best song on the album. It's a hell of a way to close it out. This is one that I really get a lot of Rainbow vibes. It's almost kind of like what's the closing song on Straight Between the Eyes? Eyes of Fire. Um, I feel it's kind of like a second cousin to that song. A little bit more fast paced, a little bit more intense, but I really love the orchestral stuff that's on here. It's a fantastic riff. That and I think the vocal melody is really really good. Joe Lynn Turner delivers a fantastic vocal performance on here. I love the when it slows right down for the bridge, and then the orchestra does the really dirgy version of the riff. then it winds its way back up again, and it really is a great song. I mean, it to me this one really doesn't sound like Deep Purple though. This is very much, this is the closest you could get to calling it, genuinely calling it like a deep rainbow or whatever. But I think it's a great song. I've always loved it. Right back. This is the song. I remember there's like a little sample. I don't know if you remember way back in the day, but this would have been like maybe early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And you could go on to, I'm not even sure if it was Amazon at the time, but there'd be online, like maybe it must have been Amazon, but there'd be online shopping places where you could, like, look for CDs, and I'd always listen to like the 30-second sample of a song, and I remember hearing the riff to Wicked Ways and thinking, wow, that album's got to be really really good. So I made it my mission to get a hold of it, and the song itself did not disappoint. Like I said, it's epic, it's big. It ticks all the boxes for a really excellent Rainbow song, and it's funny. I mean, if this album was released as the follow up to Bent Out of Shape, then Rainbow could have been something else entirely. I think that I rate this higher than the last Rainbow album. I'll say that much for sure. Um, there's something else I was gonna say about Wicked Ways, but oh no, that was it. It's not a positive thing. If there is one criticism, is again those Joe Lynn Turner lyrics. They just drive me crazy. There's a line in here that I like. You can kind of really compare Ian Gillan's sense of humor with Joe Lynn Turner's sense of humor, or sense of wordplay, I should say. So there's a line that I really like on. It's a song on House of Blue Light. What is it? Um, I forget what song it is. It might be. I think it's Mad Dog. It's Mad Dog, and Gillen's play on words is, she said a hard man is good to find. Now that's classic Gillen, right? That's very clever. There's a little bit of innuendo there. He's taking a well-established phrase, he's putting his own funny little Gillen twist on it, and you read that lyric and you go, ah, that's clever. What a funny guy. And then Joe Lynn Turner's version, and there's a line in Wicked Ways where all he's got is, "You're so bad, it feels good." Just let that matzo ball hang out there. I hate that lyric so much. It just, I mean, I shouldn't say I hate it, but I laugh. I laugh out loud every time I hear it because especially with the conviction that he sings it with. You're so bad, it feels good. It's just, I can't help but laugh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the Jolyn Turner fans out there. I had to make fun of that line because it's so silly. It's not enough to ruin the song. I mean, the music on Wicked Ways is just so good that it did nothing could take that away. But that line is just so bad. Let's be real. That line is so bad it doesn't feel good. But yeah. Other than that, I think, like I said, Wicked Ways is a great way to end the album. I've been talking about it way too long now, I think. And that ends the album proper. There's a couple of bonus tracks that came along. One of them was as a soundtrack for a movie called Fire, Ice, and Dynamite, and the song itself is called Fire, Ice, and Dynamite. I'm not a huge fan of that song, to be totally honest. That's another deliberately commercial one. Doesn't work as well as a song like Breakfast in Bed. Obviously, it was written for a soundtrack. The other problem that I have with Fire, Ice, and Dynamite is that it doesn't even have John Lord or Ian Pace on it. So Blackmore, Turner, and Glover were in LA at the time when they got the offer to do this song for a soundtrack. Lord and Pace were both in England. They weren't persuaded enough to do the huge plane ride to get to LA. But they kind of gave them their graces to go ahead and do the soundtrack. So the keyboards are just programmed in, I'm pretty sure, for that song. And then the drums are actually they're Ian Pace's drums, but put through a MIDI processor and then just like locked into a groove. So they just kind of sequence the drums using samples from Ian Pace. And I don't know, it doesn't work. And again, like, I think it's pretty telling that it's Glover, Blackmore, and Turner that put Fire and Ice together pretty much on their own. Fire, Ice, and Dynamite together, I should say. And them being the three ex-Rainbow members. So I think that's kind of telling of this era. The other bonus track, though, I think this might have been a B-side. It's really good. It's called Slow Down Sister. And that if that was on the album, that could be a contender for the best song on the album. It's got a tremendous riff, very very high energy, and it's got probably John Lord's very best organ solo. Again, for the entire period, post 1984, it's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely, I'm talking too fast. I'm not saying my words correctly. um, but it's funny, Slow Down Sister, I don't think, it doesn't even have a guitar solo. It's all John Lord, and he just owns it, and it sounds fantastic. And, it's one of those, again, why isn't there more songs in the 80s version of Deep Purple that have, just let Lord take on the solo? It's so frustrating. And then, he gets a phenomenal solo, during the sessions for this one, and they don't even put it on the album. But I think Slow Down Sister would have been perfect. I'd put that over Love Conquers All any day. But I suppose they wanted the album to have a flow, so they had to put their sappy little ballad in there. But yeah, that is Slaves and Masters. I hope that wasn't too rambling or disjointed, but yeah, that is the one album by Deep Purple Mark V. They will go on a relatively short tour. They toured mainly through 1991. They do European tour. There's a really short U.S. tour, and they even get to South America. They do some stuff in Brazil. They play Israel as well. So they definitely got around. Wasn't a huge, grueling tour by any means. Obviously, they played a lot of stuff from the new album. There's some of the Gillan stuff that Joe Lynn Turner sings, which just is bizarre and strange. I mean, he sings it well, but Joe Lynn Turner's not supposed to sing those songs. That's my take on that. Maybe that's controversial. I don't think so. It just doesn't fit. The coolest thing about the '91 tour, though, is the fact that they play Burn in its entirety. We get the full song Burn. The only time outside of Mark III and IV that Burn is played by Deep Purple. Obviously, Burn is not suited to Gillan's voice. Gillan has always refused to sing it, and fair enough. I could see why he wouldn't want to do that, but I will say JLT does a great job of singing Burn. Again, he does have a really good range. He handles the throaty Coverdale bits really well, and he even goes higher for the Glenn Hughes bits. That might be one of the highlights of the Mark V era is the fact that Burn got back into the set just for a brief little time. But so they complete the tour in 1991. They set about recording the follow-up to Slaves and Masters with Joe Lynn Turner fully on board. They complete all the backing tracks. I think JLT actually put together, he wrote lyrics and assembled vocal melodies. I think there's demos of all the songs with Joe Lynn Turner on vocals. And then at the 11th hour, the band's management and the entire band, save for Blackmore, all voted to get Ian Gillan back in so that they could do the 25th anniversary with the classic Mark II lineup. And, I know I've been making fun of Joe Lynn Turner a lot during this video, but he got a pretty raw deal there to be in the studio and taking part in the recording of the album, and the idea that this is the follow-up to Slaves and Masters, and then the follow-up to Slaves and Masters, and then be told at the 11th hour, actually no, you're done, have a nice day. That sucks. I mean, he definitely got a raw deal there, but at the end of the day, this is the situation that eventually leads us to the next album, which is The Battle Rages On, which I'm really looking forward to talking about. That's an album that has no right being as good as it is, but it is a really good record in my opinion. We get a very, very brief final run for Mark II, which we'll talk about in the next video. So thank you very much if you've made it this far. Apologies to the JLT fans if I was too harsh or if I was making fun of him too much. But I'm sure he's a good guy. He's a great singer. Can't take that away from him. Good showman. All the rest of it. Just the idea of him in Deep Purple is just so bizarre. But he was, and it's a part of the history. And I'm just going on repeating myself at this point. So thanks very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all the rest of that stuff. But I did not say that because I'm not a conformist. And you will see me in the next video where we will be talking about Mark II Round 3 for The Battle Rages On. Thanks a lot and take care. Bye-bye.